많이 효반.
What's up guys, Chen here. Behind me is an insane car. This is going to be a multi-part series where we actually follow Reese Millen and Rod Millen with this project, this Toyota Tacoma Pikes Peak car. It's actually making a return to Pikes Peak for the 100th running in exhibition class, and it'll be an exhibition run. It starts here in this state, very dusty. It hasn't been touched for many years. We have Rod, the legend, Mr. Millen. How are you?
Doing great, and you?
Good, good. Legitimately, 2 minutes ago, you just pushed it out. The tires are completely flat. I can't believe that you're going to drive this up the mountain in just a couple of months.
You know, it's sort of special to me. I had a great team of engineers and fabricators that took the inspiration from the Celica that we set the record back in '94 to build what we thought was going to be the next fastest car. And it was faster than the Celica. We unfortunately never proved it on our times, but in some of the sections it was much faster. So it's fun to push it back out here and bring back all those memories of what it took with a whole bunch of very clever engineers that could really think out of the box. Because the unique thing about Pikes Peak is that the unlimited class we ran in was unlimited and there was no rules other than safety. So you could apply whatever you thought in terms of tractive effort, downforce, horsepower and everything, because there was no rules. It didn't matter. You know, you were dealing with high altitude, which was going to restrict and limit the amount of horsepower you could make. But the TRD folks gave us the old GTP motor, you know, from the late 80s. So it's an old motor with old turbo technology, but, you know, in qualifying trim used to produce over 1,000 horsepower at sea level.
And 1,000 horsepower, what year did you run this?
So I ran this car, the Tacoma here, ran it 98, 99, and 2000.
That is incredible. It's crazy because this is legitimately my first time seeing this car, where in Southern California, I walked through that door into your shop and I'm just speechless. I'm just blown away, you know, because it's something that I've seen so many videos of, so many photos of this just making the hugest rooster tail of dust.
Yeah,
and it's just so cool. I never actually thought, A, I would see it run up Pikes Peak, and B, see it in person in this state. It's almost like you guys just ran it. When was the last time you actually ran this vehicle?
We took it to the Goodwood Festival of Speed maybe 3 times. So I think the last time we took it there was 8 years ago. It's just been sitting in the corner collecting dust. You know, Reese and his guys are going to take it over to their shop and refurbish it and get it back and running. You know, I know TRD folks had just recently overhauled the engine, so it needs a little bit of work, but not a lot of work. So it's sort of fun for me to sort of push it out here because, you know, it's been many years that, you know, I spent quite some time in it, not only doing all the test development, but, you know, racing it at Pikes Peak and that as well.
I've been photographing your son for many years. You know, I started photographing him in 2004, all the way till now. You know, we miss him so much at drifting. But it's cool to see what he's done in the off-road sphere, you know, stunt driving, and he's just like a rocket ship just going upwards. But the fun thing is, I've actually had a chance to shoot you drifting in your RX-8. Just a couple of years, you know, when you were competing in Formula Drift.
Yeah, that was a fun thing. You know, Reese had called me up and says, "Dad, here, there's a car here. Do you want to come and drive it?" So, you know, I went out there and you know, we didn't really take it too seriously. It was something that, you know, I was watching what was happening with the whole series and all that. And so it was fun to be part of it, meet all that younger generation of drivers coming along.
So what do you think about the fact that, this is one of my favorite stories about Pikes Peak. What do you think about your son going up to Pikes Peak in a drift car and winning overall?
Yeah, I know, to me, that was really, really special. It was fun for me to hold the record, but for him to then hold the record as well, you know, that was very special.
In a very non-traditional car. I mean,
exactly.
in a car that was never meant to go fast, honestly.
Yeah.
You know, we're talking about a car that started as a pedestrian street car, you know, versus something like this. This is purpose built. Reese was just here just a couple minutes ago, and he's like, it looks big, but underneath it, it's pretty much like a formula car.
Yeah, no, what he was able to pull off that year with his old drift car was very spectacular, and I don't think a lot of people realize that. As you said, it wasn't purpose-built for the mountain. He adapted what he had to make it handle, go left and right, and, you know, more like a road racing car.
It's funny because that was also the first year Romain Dumas came to tackle the mountain in I think it was a GT3 Cup car.
Yeah.
And the time was so close, but you know, as you know, it doesn't matter how close it is. You know, you win. So you guys are gonna have to do a lot, or Reese and the team will have to do a lot to get this up and running again. But it amazes me even now that you guys just filled it up with air. It was completely flat, all four, and it still rolls.
Yeah. Of course, Reese's guys are going to go through the whole drivetrain, you know, the brakes, and make sure, you know, first of all, that it's not going to fail and it's going to be safe to drive. We'll take it out and do some shakedown runs at maybe Willow Springs or something like that, just to make sure that the whole engine management system and all that is working properly as well.
So none of that stuff is updated either. It's just from of era, all of that stuff.
It's all very old school, the old turbo days. So it doesn't have any anti-lag system or anything like that. You know, these cars never had that. Yes, they make a lot of horsepower, but there's a lot of lag as well, which, you know, when we ran them on a dirt road, you had to anticipate that. So it was, you know, a different driving skill perhaps to what you see today.
Did you guys do any aero testing or anything when you guys developed this?
So this was done in the early days of CFD, which is the computer models and all that. We had to model what the aero forces would be on the car. We had a lot of information from the first Celica that we ran. And so what we would do, we would fully instrument all four corners of the car, and we would take it out to Al Mirage Dry Lake early in the morning and do 100-mile-an-hour passes and measure the amount of downforce. And we would also make a lot of changes so that we could shift that downforce from the front to the rear or anywhere in between. So when we would go to the mountain, all I had to do was tell the engineers, it's either understeering or oversteering. And so aerodynamically, they could move the center of pressure forwards and backwards of the car to make it more balanced for me to drive at high speed.
It makes me wonder how much different that will be when it's applied to this current mountain in this current condition, which is paved, but it's a very bumpy road.
Yeah, well, keep in mind, this car ran on all dirt roads, so it was bumpy as well then. We were looking for mechanical grip at low speeds. So then we had the suspension set, and I think in this case here, we're not going to change the suspension setup and all that. It'll take care of all the bumpy roads quite well. It perhaps was not going to be optimized for the pavement.
I know this is super early, but just based off your best guess, what do you think you would run on race day? Let's say it's a perfect, good condition track, good weather. What do you think this would run?
Well, you know, not with me driving anymore, you know, I don't take the risks that I used to take, you could say. And I'm not as practiced, you know, keep in mind, you know, 25 years ago, I was jumping into a race car every weekend. But reflecting on this is a 10-minute car on a dirt road, on dirt tires. So what would it be? It's easily an 8-minute car, is my feeling, is if it was set up correctly and had the right driver behind the wheel. I think it would be very capable of that. It still has perhaps more downforce than any of the cars that I've seen going up there. So that in those days, we optimized that very well.
That's really incredible to hear, because I can't tell you how many teams are up there trying to just break the 10-minute mark still.
Yeah.
You know, so that is really incredible to hear. So the body is actually all fiberglass?
It's carbon.
Oh, it's actually carbon.
It's all carbon.
And this is something that you guys actually made.
We made this in-house, yeah. We made the whole car in-house.
Is this something similar to what you ran
Oh,
before?
This is the original tires. BF Goodrich was one of the partners involved with this program. And so they made the special tire for the mountain here. It was the same tire that was used on the Celica, you know, previous to this one. It's a special tire, not only worked with the dirt roads, but because the granite surface on the mountain there was, the small rocks were quite sharp. You know, they had to make a tire that had Kevlar belts in it. It'd still be compliant enough to give us the traction. We would only run about 12 psi. That way, we tried to optimize the amount of traction we could get. Traction in those days, as you can imagine, coming out of all those sharp hairpin switchback corners, I think there's 16 or 18 of those. To get out of those corners, of course, you had to have four-wheel drive, but you could never use full throttle until you were in fourth or fifth gear.
So this is four-wheel drive?
This is four-wheel drive.
And it's running a 335 squared setup, 335 30/17. That is a wide tire.
Yeah, and that's what BF Goodrich spent a lot of time. We would go to the mountains. Initially, we had 5 different constructions that they wanted to evaluate. And then we had 3 different compounds. So as you can imagine, when we'd go to the mountain to test on a 3-day test, there was lots of different variations of that tire until we narrowed it down to 1 construction and 3 different compounds, which of course we would play with those different compounds and the grooving depending on what the road surface was. We never ran this with slick tires because it was always a dirt road.
Do you know what you would run this year for your demonstration run?
We will run a slick tire.
Okay.
Yes, we will.
And it'll be a BFG? Or
Unfortunately,
you don't know?
they don't make this size anymore. So we're going to have to look around. There's a few options there and see what we can, with a different brand.
For me, just being a nerd from the outside looking in, I'm not a racing driver, but I love following racing. I love shooting racing.
Yep.
This sort of stuff is so interesting to me, really. So this side is missing, but it's kind of interesting. You can actually see like the fender liner is carbon fiber.
Yes. The whole car is carbon fiber. This car went through a fire once and we had to quickly repair it before we went to the race. So the rear sides are made of fiberglass. We didn't have a chance to redo the sides in carbon. But one of the things that are really unique, and if you look inside, down the side here, you can see the venturi, the underbody work extends all the way up to where I sit in the car here.
Can we take a look at it? Can we take the shell off?
Paul,
yeah.
over here.
Me with the bad wind.
Yeah.
So
Here,
just-
I'll do it. Oh, you want to film me?
I'll film you.
Okay. Oh, it is heavy. It's a lot heavier than it looks. It is carbon fiber though.
Yeah,
And then can we do the back?
sure. There we go. And
Incredible.
over the back.
Over the back. That's a lot lighter. Now we can see everything. We can see the underside. But the Venturi here, it's flat bottom all over here.
It's flat bottom here, so there's 2 things going on here. Of course, it's 4-wheel drive. We wanted to create downforce equally throughout the car. So we've got an underwing in the front here, and the shape of this underwing, and this was all designed by computer to optimize, the airflow underneath the car. And of course, the air evacuates out through the sides of the bodywork.
Oh, that's why there's a big,
Hence
like
this
a
area here, which
NACTA duct looking thing here.
which evacuates the air from underneath the car. And then these venturis on the back here create the downforce in the middle of the car. A lot of the different adjustments, we can move that center of pressure forwards and backwards of the car to get the aero balance at high speed. This Tacoma, the design of it was driven by lessons learned from the Celica, which pushed me as a driver to the middle so these venturis could come further forward. And putting the motor right behind me, and of course then transmission, then a very short drive shaft to the rear differential. But we could optimize these venturis through the car here. So what we would find out at the dry lake, at 100 miles an hour, we could get 2,000 pounds of downforce on this whole machine, which is the weight of the car.
And that's at sea level, or?
That was at about 4,000 feet.
Got it.
Of course, at altitude, it'll be a bit less than that. But, we wanted to get as much as we can. And the wonderful thing was the rules allowed it. There was no limitations.
I absolutely love Pikes Peak because you could have this racing against a home-built, garage-built car.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter. You may go under 10 minutes, go 9 or 8 minutes in this thing, And then, Joe Schmo in their garage is building something to go 15 minutes and he's just as happy when he makes it to the top. With that said, we always talk about when it comes to Pikes Peak is the air is up to 40% less at the top. Does the driving characteristics of the car change also because it's less air in terms of downforce?
I'm going to say the balance of the car is not changing. Is the amount of downforce reducing? Yes, it is. Motor-wise, it makes over 1,000 horsepower at sea level, but at the start line, the engineers told me it's about 850 and 650 at the top. So, there's the amount of losses you're going to get. I'm sure aero-wise, it's the same as well. But keep in mind, the air's a bit thinner, so there's not as much restriction.
Yeah.
I'm pushing through the air. So
that's a good point.
So you have a few things that are on your advantage.
Yeah.
But on this car here, if you look at the rear wing, it's huge. And most people think that the rear wing is important for giving downforce to the back. That's not the case here. That rear wing is to evacuate the air through these venturis and cause the downforce up near the front of the car. So because it is a four-wheel drive car, you've got to keep in mind you can't afford to get just downforce on the rear. You want downforce in the middle of the car, certainly at high speed. But having said that, playing with the position of this rear wing, forwards and backwards, and the front underwing there as well, was very critical on this car. It took us a couple of years to get this one balanced out to make it as drivable as what the Celica was. It's 150 pounds lighter than the Celica was, and sadly, on the last year we raced it there, at the halfway point, we were already at 15 seconds faster than we'd ever been in any of the Celica or this car. So it had the potential to go a 945 or something rather like that, even on a dirt road. But we had a turbo failure, and so we never made it to the top.
Just that mountain, she will give and take.
That's the unique thing about that. We won there 5 times, so I can't really complain. But every year we would try to do better and better, and that year, we just didn't quite work out.
Incredible. Well, we can't wait to see it again. So this is an inline 4.
It's the old 503 Toyota GTP motor that TRD built and was so successful in IMSA racing with the Dan Gurney team. When that series finished, or Toyota's involvement with that, there were quite a few of these motors available. That was a critical part in designing our original Celica for Pikes Peak.
This was not a production motor.
No, it was never a production motor. It was always a racing motor. So there is no production heritage in this motor.
Got it. And then this is kind of interesting to see the transfer case here. What is that even out of?
So the transmission, it's a Wiseman Traction Products transmission, and then our engineers designed and we built in-house all the four-wheel drive componentry to get the drive to the front differentials, front and rear. We also did the differentials in-house as well, which is, as much magnesium as we could to keep all the weight down as well. It's a 50-50 torque split. There is no center differential. I've always been a proponent of that. It's locked across the rear axle and it's locked front to back. There is a limit slip diff in the front axle, which was all adjustable manually, mechanically. The goal was, in being a dirt car, was to get the most traction you could. And of course, when all 4 wheels are working to get traction, to me that was the best way, and our engineers felt the same way, was to get the most forward propulsion we could get. So we would work from a mechanical grip standpoint in terms of springs and shocks, to optimize the car for traction going forward out of all those hairpin corners. And so we found that we could get it very balanced, but also get the best traction we could get.
I cannot believe it's a locked rear diff.
Yeah.
It's like a drift car.
It is like a drift car, but many of my off-road cars or rally cars in those days, I would always go for a locked rear diff. Once again, best traction and loose surface.
Yeah, and probably less chance of failure.
Less chance of failure, but that was a given. I said, we're going to now work on the chassis to get the handling right, but let's stay with optimum grip.
So what does this weigh then?
So this weighs in, fueled up, ready to go, without me in it, is about right at 2,000 pounds.
Incredible. It's actually pretty big for it to weigh 2,000 pounds. It's kind of incredible.
Well, when you look at the chassis is a very lightweight component. You know, one of the other things that's quite important on this car that we learned from the Celica was the suspension. You know, because we wanted to have a very compliant suspension in terms of traction for all the switchback corners. We wanted the wheels and tires because it was a dirt road and it wasn't dead smooth. It was, you know, some corrugations and ruts and all that. So we had to allow the wheels to follow the terrain. As I said, we run very low tire pressure, but one of the things the engineers came up with, and if you look at the front here, it's got a 3-spring system.
Whoa, this is so cool. I've never seen anything like this.
So these springs, these outer springs here, work on each corner here, so that at low speed it's very compliant. The car is quite soft, and then as speed increases and the aero downforce goes on, then in comes through this linkage system here, in comes the 3rd spring with its own damper as well, so that now this holds the car at the optimum height for the aero downforce.
Okay, so that's just another thing that you have to tune in.
Oh, we have to tune all that.
Because if it's too soft, then it'll bottom out.
It'll bottom out. And that's what we found with the Celica. We had to put shims under the shock absorbers to bottom it out. Anything over 100 miles an hour, that car was fully bottomed out because we could not afford to let it go down too low because we would start choking off the air and lose downforce. So
interesting. This was your workaround.
This was our engineer's workaround to get around that. So if you look in the rear, you will also see a 3-spring and damper unit here as well. Quite complicated. If you look at this damper here on the left side of the car is for the right wheel.
What a crazy cantilever setup here.
So it's got linkage here to work this one, and of course the opposite for the other side. And then through these rockers here, they work another system here that drives the 3rd spring and doing exactly what the front spring is doing as well in terms of holding the car at the correct ride height.
Yeah, it makes sense because once you get to a slower speed corner, it increases ride height naturally, and then maybe it absorbs the bumps a little better or whatever, and then as you go faster, the car lowers, and on that versus bottoming out this.
Exactly. So we have low speed suspension and high speed suspension, and you know, once again, the uniqueness about Pikes Peak allowed us to be very creative like that. Take it one more step further, then a linkage here on this upper rocker here is the blade anti-roll bar as well. So that in the cockpit here, I had control of the rear anti-roll bar so that on the slow speed corners, I could stiffen the rear of the car, which would make it easier. Keep in mind, it's all got a lock diffs and everything. Would make it easier to rotate. And then as soon as I got out of that corner, I could let it go again, which would then allow the aero and the springs to work in terms of, you know, the whole suspension setup that we came up with on the car.
I could just imagine you being so busy in that cockpit too then.
You were busy. What was really important, this is not a car you just jump in and drive. I was closely connected to all the engineers about the whole design concept and what was going on. Not that I knew what to do, but I would tell them what I'd want. And they came up with all these creative ideas. But what was really, really critical was we did lots and lots of testing, days and days of testing to perfect the whole system, you know, just getting the right spring rates, the right damping rates and everything else like that, and learning all the things that you could make this machine better.
So it actually had a traditional clutch pedal too then, huh?
Yeah, it's clutch pedal, you know, just per normal. And then throttle. At one stage we had nitrous oxide in this car, but then TRD, we tested with it, which was going to give us another 10% horsepower. We tested with it, it was good, but everybody got a little nervous about the reliability, so we ended up never racing with it. So that was on the throttle, and it was the last little bit of the throttle. So nitrous never came in until we went full throttle. And of course, as I said, you would never go in a car like this, you would never use full throttle until 4th gear, 5th gear, but you'd never use it in the low gears because you were so traction limited.
Just incredible. So what is that dial for over there?
This is for startup, cold start. The engine management system, that was never calibrated for cold start. So you could say that was a choke to richen it up for cold start. And then you would turn it back up to 0 and that would be your running setup.
And it's left-hand shift, is it because you're just more used to left-hand
No. I've spent most of my life right-hand shift, but no, the shifter coming out of the gearbox was on this side. So, the engineers came to me and said, do you mind shifting with the left? Because it'll be a lot easier for us to package all that into the car. So, no, it's fine. Yeah. My early days, I shifted with the left hand. So
Right.
if I go back to that, that's okay.
This side, it's interesting, the space limitation here. This side is the intercooler.
Intercooler here. So of course the intercooler tube is going right very close to my seat. So of course it's got some heat shielding as well because in the early days I'd get a pretty hot ass.
This fuel cell here, it seems so small. But this is just enough.
Just
to
enough
get
fuel.
you up.
I think it was. It's either 10 or 12 gallons, but enough fuel to get to the top. Not back down though.
You have to roll down.
Yeah.
Did this have incredible turbo lag?
You can see the turbocharger is quite large for the altitude.
Yeah.
Because with the air getting so thin, you do run into an overspeed situation. But it's 60 mil, I think 65 mil maybe, as the intake diameter. And yes, it does have a lot of lag. In those days when I was testing a lot with it, you learned how to drive around that. It perhaps got to the point where I didn't really think it had much lag.
Well, thank you so much for showing us. I know I ask a lot of questions, but this is just so interesting to me because unfortunately I wasn't of age to be there on the side of the mountain photographing you.
Yeah.
But we'll make up for that, obviously this year, the 100th running. I always say it's such an honor to be the official photographer for Pikes Peak, just because I'm documenting this sort of racing for generations to come. It's not just about me and showing my pictures, it's about just the historic aspect of the race.
I think the folks at Pikes Peak recognize your passion for motorsports and for cars like this. So, I think we're all thrilled that you're sharing what goes into some of these special cars and the uniqueness about Pikes Peak. It's 100-year history, where it came from. It was part of IndyCar series, a long time ago. And it's had many famous names and many manufacturers get involved with that event. So it is truly unique around the world.
With that said, I want to go to another hill climb, your hill climb at your driveway in New Zealand, hopefully once the world opens up a little more. Leadfoot Festival, it's just, I have to go. I've seen so much good stuff from that event, my good buddy Mad Mike with his crazy four-rotor machines, it's so cool to see his car go up your driveway. So we need some of that hopefully soon.
Well, my wife Shelley and I, we spent 9 years doing Leadfoot and thoroughly enjoyed bringing all those disciplines of motorsport to our farm in New Zealand and racing up our driveway. It's sad that that's not happening right now. It hasn't happened for a couple of years. And we also look forward to getting back to doing that again as well and sharing our passion, bringing out some of my old cars. I think this car is going to go down there sometime in the future as well.
Ooh, I can't wait for that. Yeah, so as soon as it starts up again, I'll be there. I just did notice one more thing though, these tunnels on the actual body. So that is for the intercooler over there, huh? Yeah,
so one side there is for the intercooler. And then the other side here brings air to the turbocharger.
It just goes to cool the turbo, or it just brings it
No, it brings air into the...
Oh, it's the intake box.
Into the intake box.
Oh, okay. Interesting. So this was your view pretty much right here.
Yeah.
Just
Just
this.
Just this little piece in front.
Oh, incredible. There's even a vent here. What is that for?
Just to get air in here. You know, being in the center of the car, you know, I felt I needed a little bit of fresh air blowing into the car. Of course, I would wear oxygen as well, but just a little bit of air circulation. As I said, being in the center car, I wasn't getting that. So that was a bit of an afterthought. You know, once we got to the mountain, I said to the guys, I said, you know, it's pretty stuffy in here. I get a little claustrophobic. So, you know, as you can see, you enter through the roof of the car.
Oh, that's how you get in.
That's how you get in.
Because they can't just put the body on top of you.
No, and that's how I get in and out. That's once the body's strapped down, that's my way of getting in and out.
Are these open then?
These are open all the time. But it's not possible for me to get out through there, through those side windows. I've done it once, I think, and it wasn't pretty.
Thanks again. We're going to be following along. You know, once you actually start digging into it, we'd love to come back, check out some of that. And of course, we'll follow you along the whole Pikes Peak week. I know you'll be there the whole week, but you'll probably have limited practice just because of what it is, but we'll be there for all of them, including your full run up on Sunday.
Super.
Yeah.
Great.
Thanks,
Larry.
The pedal box is tiny. I mean, you have to wear race shoes to use it properly, but clutch, normal clutch, but this is just up and down. The seat is molded to rod. It's amazing that I can fit in it. Actually, it's pretty comfortable, but you know, it is molded to. This is so cool. There's not much room here at all. Check out this serial port, dude. Look at this. Look at this serial port. This is where you hook up your 28.8 modem. I don't know.
Bad boy runs on Windows 95, guys.
I know.
What's that?
Oh,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
should have seen.
It came with
you should-
AOL, free
You should have
CDs.
seen the computer TRD had for this.
Yeah.
It was this square, but it was at least this thick.
Uh-huh.
You know, you would carry it around like this and plug it in. You know, this is 80s.
It's like I had a car battery for this battery, right?
Oh, actually, you know what I remember? It was critical that thing was always charged every night.
Oh, I bet. Where was your oxygen tank?
I think right underneath your legs. There.
Oh, this tube here.
Is there some straps there?
This, yeah.
Yeah, that's where it laid. right
Not a
there.
fire extinguisher.
Yeah.
This whole bad boy?
Yeah, so this was for the RX-7 in 92, I think it was.
What is that? The ECU?
ECU.
That big? You see that thing? That's the ECU? What the heck?
Why does it have AN fittings?
There was all the pressure sensors and all that.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
for the boost maps and all that sort of stuff.
Okay.
I don't know what's going on there. That should go on there, Larry. You just tune it.
To the right.
Let me straight.
Oh, there it is.
Here we go. Right there. Yeah.
Whoa! Look at that.
So you would never look at the dash. You would
Yeah.
You would look at the dash to warm it up. Didn't have. It had no rev limiter or anything like that.
It didn't have a rev limiter.
No, they never had one of those.
You never cared about that stuff, though, did you?
No, but you did so much testing and everything, and the engineers could download and see what I was revving it to. And you know, in the lower gears, because traction was such a problem, you would short shift all the time.
Got it. You wouldn't just come out of a corner, bounce off the rev limiter a couple times.
Never did that. You know, seriously, when I went to drifting and listened to all those guys, I go, ooh, that doesn't sound good.
Yeah.
So I think you would look at it mainly in testing, but once you got the hang of that, you'd never look at it again. You know, when men were men and we didn't have any rev limiters.
And this is a 5-speed?
High speed.
And did you get up to 5th gear?
Oh, Max, it would put it the red line on first. It was geared. It was geared for that.
This is so cool. Where do you put this?
Yeah, just put it there. Put it in the square.
Okay, now I'm gonna attempt to get out of this thing.
But keep in mind with all the bodywork on and all that, you
Yeah.
can't do that.
There's not much room.
No,
Yeah,
you-
I can't just go like this.
You gotta, you get up to there and then slide yourself up. And that was a lot easier when I was a lot younger.
Jeez.
Don't force on the bus.
That's more of a jump from there, I think. You know.
Yeah. That's it. Hold on. When men were men. No ABS, no rev limiter, no traction control, no anti-lag, no pavement, no problem.